Hello, Internet. It's your friendly host, Logan Albright, back again with another book review for your viewing pleasure. And today I'm going to talk about one of my favorite science fiction authors, Robert Heinlein. But it's not the book you're thinking of. I'm not going to talk about Stranger in a Strange Land. I'm not going to talk about The Moon is a Harsh Mistress. I've already talked about that one. I'm not going to talk about Starship Troopers. And I'm not going to talk about Time Enough for Love, which I also already talked about. This book is called Starman Jones, and I got it at a used bookstore for $2. What a deal. And this is one of Heinlein's books that is targeted towards a younger audience. I don't know if it's really towards children, but it's certainly towards a young adult or younger audience. And it's a lot different than his other books. So let's talk about it. Robert Heinlein is sort of famous, or one might say infamous, for his exploration of taboos in his work. He has a real thing for exploring, especially sexual taboos, and many of his books end with characters sort of engaging in sex that would be considered illicit in modern society. He explores incest taboos, he explores orgy, group sex taboos, things like that. He's really into that stuff. He was a bit of a pervy guy, but he's really interesting and his books are great. But obviously, when he's writing for a younger audience, he's going to omit that. And so what do you get when you get a Heinlein book that's directed towards a younger audience, like Starman Jones? You get something that's a lot less idea heavy. You know, it's a lot less thinky, and it's a lot more of a space adventure, kind of a space opera, closer to a Star Wars than like a Total Recall or something like that. The plot of Starman Jones is filled with a lot of traditional science fiction or adventure tropes. I wouldn't call it a terribly original book, but then again, it was written in the 1950s, and a lot less ground had been covered in the science fiction literature arena. But as we know from Heinlein's mature works, he is capable of coming up with very in-depth philosophical, thinky sort of books. And so he's simplifying a lot. But one of the things I find interesting is that while he's simplifying in terms of ideas, he doesn't simplify that much in terms of prose. The prose in this book is really not that much easier to read than the prose in his mature works, his works for adults. And that's something I want to get into about the way that children's books are now versus the way that they were 50 years ago or 70 years ago. Very briefly, I'll go through the plot of Starman Jones and some of the key points. He is like a farm boy in the future. He becomes frustrated with his mother remarries a horrible stepfather. He doesn't want to stick around. He wants to follow the path of his uncle and become an astrogator, like a navigator for spaceships. And he flees to the big city and tries to hook up on a spaceship and go and learn the trade. He has a photographic memory, and he has committed all of these astrogator tables to memory, which everyone is amazed by because it's just random strings of numbers, and he finds nothing strange about this. He read the book and he remembers it perfectly. No one else can do that, so he has a real advantage going in. He manages to sneak on board a spaceship, and he befriends the daughter of the captain, of a high-ranking official, and she doesn't really understand the class distinction, that she's not supposed to hang out with him, and he has to kind of educate her on the differences between their social station, and they become fast friends and end up, kind of breaking down some of these barriers. As you can see, these are a lot of really standard adventure story tropes, like where the poor farm boy or knight goes off and meets the princess, the king's daughter. It's standard stuff. But the thing I find really fascinating about this is just when you read older children's books and you read modern children's books, the difference in like reading level. I think we expected a lot more of kids back then because this is not, it's not a trivial book to read. It's not like a See Spot Run or a Dr. Seuss kind of book. This is it's written in mature prose, and I think based on the content, it would be something that like a 10-year-old, 9-year-old, and 8-year-old could easily understand. But the prose is certainly more than we would give an 8-year-old today. And I wanted to delve into that a little bit because I feel like we've dumbed down the reading expectations for our youth in a way that's certainly not productive in my view. It's treating people as less capable than they actually are, and inviting them to kind of extend their infancy longer than they need to. They can read these books and they can learn from them. The contrast is even more marked when you go back and look at even older books, like if you read the original Peter Pan or Pinocchio, or you read, I tried to get my nieces a copy of The Wind in the Willows because I saw the movie versions of that, the cartoon version of that when I was a kid. I thought that'll be a good children's story. Very advanced, very hard to read. A lot of these children's books from the days of yesteryear are super advanced reading level, and no one really thought anything about this. They would just read them to their kids or have their kids read them themselves, and they seem to be able to understand it. And I wonder what has happened to where we now have these very, very simplistic books that we're feeding our children. And it's not always the case. I mean, the later Harry Potter books are certainly not easy reads if you are very young. They kind of force you to reach for it a little bit, and that seems to have been very popular, of course. But I think that that's the exception rather than the rule. And I think that those books and books like these prove that children, if they are forced to reach for it a little bit and go out beyond their comfort zone a little, I think they'll do pretty well. As for Starman Jones as a book, I don't know that it's aged particularly well. The tropes have certainly been run into the ground, and I didn't find the adventure story particularly gripping, but I did find it interesting just as a museum piece to get a sense of what children in the 1950s were reading and getting excited about. And obviously Heinlein was very successful. He was successful with his children's books as well as his mature works, and clearly kids were capable of grasping this stuff and getting a real grip on it. And so I thought that was instructive, and I thought it was something we could kind of talk about a little bit. You guys need to let me know what you think in the comments. Am I on the right track here? Have we dumbed down literature for children too much? Was it too advanced in the past and children weren't able to catch up, and that's why we dumbed it down to make it more accessible to them? What's the difference? Why is it different now? What has changed? I'd like to know your opinions on this, but I just wanted to share my experiences with my first effort at reading a children's book of Heinlein, because I've read a lot of his adult works, and I thought it was really fascinating to see how little the prose is dumbed down, even though the ideas are much more simplistic compared to his other works. Hey, it's coming up on Thanksgiving, so I just want to wish you all a very happy Thanksgiving. I hope you have a lot to be thankful for. I'm thankful for all of my subscribers, and if you haven't subscribed yet, I hope you will, and I will bring you more videos like this every week. Probably not next week because I'll be celebrating, but I'm trying to bring you a new video every week of a book I've read and something I find interesting. So please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave me a comment down below. I'd love to know what you think. And like I said, happy Thanksgiving. I'll catch you next time. I also got this other Heinlein children's book, The Door into Summer, for $3, so I expect it to be 50% better than the other one. Have you guys read this? Let me know if it's any good. Should I read it?